Hey everybody, welcome back inside the DTECH interview studio. I'm with Tom Dietrich, CEO of Itron, our presenting sponsor of DTECH 26 out here in San Diego, California. If you missed Tom's keynote speech out in the rainy bandshell on Monday night, you really missed something special. And I'm not just greasing your wheels. I'm saying that from a content perspective. One of the most quotable speeches about the utility and power industries that I've had the privilege of listening to. Presuming you, watching this video, missed it, Tom, could you please give the people the Cliff's Notes? What is driving our industry right now?
Well, Paul, first, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time, and you make me blush. So you're very charitable with your comments. But what I tried to lay out in the keynote was really frame up in very tangible terms what's going on across the industry. Grid performance is never been more critical, whether you're talking about economics or whether you're talking about safety or you're talking about just community involvement. It's never been more important that we need to do something to improve the performance of the grid from a resiliency, reliability, and affordability point of view. And let's not forget about safety, which is paramount in the utility industry. So grid transformation as a topic is not a slogan that we can adopt anymore. It's something that we have to take on and something that we have to do. I think from a implementation point of view, how do you do that? The foundation of it is data. So how can we put together and use all of the data that's in our hands today to enable that transformation of the grid? We have our hands on so many different types of data that we can put to use. And I think the key in all of this is making sure that the assets that we put in the ground are reusable in multiple different ways. We have to be able to move at the speed of software, if you will, to be able to get the best out of the performance of the grid itself. So to the extent you can transform assets you put in the field from the old-fashioned flip phone to the smartphone and download applications into it, you're already further ahead because you didn't have to roll the truck to be able to solve a problem. So if we're looking for proactive maintenance issues, hey, this transformer's starting to go bad, now we have a way to do that because you can see it in the data. That's really the vision that we have as Itron. We started on this vision several years ago by bringing forward this idea of grid edge intelligence. So distributed intelligence, this notion of downloadable applications. Thus far, we have 16 million of those in the ground, 10 million more in backlog. Crunch all you want. We'll keep making more to make sure that we can scale out this vision for our customers. That was the essence of the speech, and I was fortunate to have 3 more customers come on board and give sort of, I'll call them loose testimonials, but ways that they're using data to solve real world problems.
Everything from wildfire prevention to making sure that we're leveraging the new tools that we have on the grid in the most effective ways. One thing that you touched on in your speech too was artificial intelligence, the way utilities are starting to bring it into the fold. And I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned that AI is not the future of the grid because it's already in the grid. Could you expound a little bit on that and ways that utilities are using this, the hot button technology du jour to actually make our lives better and our grid more efficient?
Right. So I very much meant what I said. It's not the future because it is here today. So the winter storm Fern that just sort of roared across the U.S. and created ice and snow through much of the southern half of the U.S., you can find some great clips on CNBC with utility CEOs talking about how they used AI models to understand the track of the storm, understand the base of their assets, and pre-position crews to put the system back together again right after the ice and the snows had passed. That's not a futuristic thing. That's something that happened this past week. But using the models, it was an Itron AI model where you can say, okay, here's the state of my assets. Here's where the storm track is supposed to be. I can recruit crews from all across the U.S. and get them in position so that we can put the system back together again after a huge event. That's not just one case. That was 10 utilities that are across the U.S. There's one example. There was a press release that came out from DTECH this morning, which was San Diego Gas and Electric, a company called Temetis, and Itron using it to look for anomalies in the system, using AI technology to really pinpoint where there could be things that are going on that eventually could lead to a wildfire. So it's not wildfire detection, which of course is a noble endeavor, but this is let's get ahead of it and detect something before it happens. Another release just from this week was a collaboration between Microsoft and Itron to bring the power of large language models, to bring the capability of the frontier models to bear on the use of utility data. So you can speak to a computer in natural language and get it to generate really insightful reports back out of your meter data management data. So there's 3 examples that are happening right here and right now. Above all of that, though, the point that I hope came through in the keynote yesterday is the thing that we need to do as an industry and not violate is trust. The trust in what we do, because it is at the base of the pyramid for economics and for safety. We've got to make sure that we have the use of AI, which is done in a way where everything we do is traceable, everything we do is explainable. And when we do that, we can build trust, and trust is what will be speedy and build the speed that we need to accelerate the use of more and more technology in the grid.
I'm glad you brought up the trust and accountability component, because I feel like, and I'm not the only one who would say this, but utilities have historically worn this albatross of being slow movers, late adopters. We need to be always on, the 99.9900, et cetera. But I feel like just listening to you talk, we're talking about press releases happening right now, groundbreaking stuff. Things are changing every day. It feels like this space is turning into more of the classic startup, move fast to break stuff. But yet we still have to be mindful of the fact that the grid is the grid, and it is an old system of poles and wires that needs to be modernized intelligently.
Right.
How are utilities, I say all that to say this, how are utilities taking all of these disparate new data points and information that they've never had access to and somehow making sense of it?
Yeah. Well, I would say it's not an easy job, right? You said it well there. You've got to balance the needs of society and the mandate of utilities. Nobody wants to go to the switch on the wall and not have the lights come on when you flip the switch. So the need to be, risk adverse, if you will, in terms of how you approach things, it's the mandate. It's what we as consumers would want. So we've got to respect that and make sure we work with it. How do we take new technologies and bring it into the grid? I think we've got to start with things which are more on the probabilistic side and use AI as a decision partner, not as a decision maker. So AI is not the authority. The smartest thing in the grid is the human, and it will be that way for quite some time. But let's augment what we do here and find ways we can do that to use that power to synthesize data much, much faster. And that's what I think you see utilities doing across the industry today. And I think it's really, really fascinating and just a great place to be.
I find it fascinating that you can take little sensors and get so much information out of them and then take that information and do so many other things with it. Have you been surprised by any use cases of Itron's technology? Has something come across your desk where you're like, wow, I never would have considered that?
Well, I don't know if it's never would have considered. I always thought it was nearly impossible. So, okay, this tells you what a geek engineer is, and I truly am at the core of my being. But the grid was designed with a certain power factor in mind. Is like, this is how we think the devices would work, and that basic design is decades old. And when you really go look out at the edge of the grid, that isn't what's actually happening in terms of power delivery. So if you can understand power factor at every delivery point, there is so much benefit we can get in terms of efficiency inside of the grid. And as an engineer, that is pure sexy. I mean, it's great stuff to be able to do that. So I think it's having that visibility, which is much, much greater than what I dreamed about. And like, wouldn't it be great to know this? Now we can, and we can put that stuff to work. So I think that's the part that has been really, really fun.
Yeah, and Itron seems to be adding more tools to its toolkit by the day. You guys are a growing company. Tell me a little bit about recent acquisitions and the way you're growing to accommodate this grid of the future that we're all working on.
Thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, we've done 2 acquisitions here during the last 3 or 4 months. Both of them are SaaS-oriented types of applications. So from an investor point of view, it brings nice high-margin recurring revenue and stability into the business, which is one part of the equation. But the more interesting part is the thing that actually, the way we can use data to solve problems for our customers. So we can now be with our customers every step of the way throughout the life cycle of the asset. You want to plan what you want to do. We have ways you can use electricity forecasting or power flow analysis on a forward-looking basis. You want to build new capabilities because you have new things that more generation needs, more transmission needs, more distribution needs. We now can digitize and automate that build process so you have accurate as-built data from the start, and you know in real time when a project is completed, and you can automate that closeout process. So it is no longer clipboards with bad handwriting on the front seat of the Chevy pickup truck. It's automatically into, and it is delivered into your GIS system, for an example. During the operational phase of those assets, okay, that's what Itron has been involved in for decades. You want to run it, we can tell you how to do that. And finally, when you want to protect it and maintain it, you want to put the system back together again after a storm, we can bring that technology to bear. So all the way around that asset life cycle, from planning to building to operating to maintaining and protecting, we now have ways we can help our customers do that. At the end of the day, we've got to keep 4 words in mind, and these were kind of the 4 words that I used in the very first minute of the keynote yesterday. It is resiliency, reliability, affordability, and safety, and that's what moves the utility industry, and we can bring technology to bear to really help on those 4 points. I think we have a winning combination.
Tom, I could listen to you talk about this stuff all day long, but I do have to cast you back out into the sea that is DTECH. Before I do so, though, I'd love to pick your brain on one more thing. You have a really unique perspective on the utility industry in that you've got eyes in a whole bunch of different places. Is there anything that's on your desk right now that you think the industry doesn't have enough attention on yet, or maybe something that you've got a pulse on that you're like, this might be an issue in 6 months or a year that we're just not talking about enough yet?
I think that we are overly focused on the answer to the demand growth problem is the generation problem. I would say that the generation clearly is part of what needs to change to be able to power it up, but I think we have to look at the problem much more holistically. So it is eking out more performance out of the distribution grid. It is finding ways to change the regulatory process to build more transmission. It is finding ways to increase the amount of generation we have, but it's very much an all of the above rather than getting too focused on one piece of the puzzle. So that the mental image I would give you is, the vaudeville act where the guy's got to keep all the plates spinning type of thing. We need to look at all the plates and make sure we can solve it in a way that really results in the system that we as consumers all want to use.
Appreciate the lasting mental imagery. Tom Dietrich, CEO of Itron in the DTECH interview studio.
Paul,
really
thanks for having
appreciate your time. Thank you for coming out to the event.